everyone. I'm Monica Lewinsky, and I'm joining you today on the Mental Health Coalition Instagram handle. Some of you may know that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so I'm happy to be having this conversation with my good friend, Alan Cumming, who's an incredible award-winning actor and Broadway sensation. Oh, hi.
Too kind. Too kind.
Yes, I'm not a Luddite. I did it.
You did it, Monica. You did it.
Hi, honey.
I love your bangs. Can we just talk about your bangs for a second?
Well, I was sick of,
Gorgeous.
thank you. I was sick of looking at myself from Zoom, so I chopped them off, and then it was really helpful because I got Bell's palsy, I think, as you know, in March. So it really helped because I can't get Botox. So for a while. So.
Hilarious. Well, do you know there's a new thing here I saw on the news, and I'm in Australia, I'm in Adelaide, and there's a new thing here where people go at their lunchtime and they do that thing where they put a bit of string underneath your eyebrow and pull your eyebrows up.
Right. I don't know.
Lunchtime.
I just know my luck would be like the string would break at the worst possible moment. So
I don't think I'd like that. I don't want any string.
I know.
Anyway, so this is Mental Health Awareness Month, if you weren't aware, and Kenneth Cole, your friend and mine, the lovely designer and activist, is doing this thing he kind of helped found the Mental Health Coalition, and every day during May they're doing this thing called one-to-one, where two people chat about mental health and just generally have a blather about where they are, and just the aim of the whole thing is to sort of destigmatize talking about our mental health. And I have to say, I don't know about you, Monica, but I think during COVID it's become there's been such a rise, in my experience anyway, of people being open and talking about mental health. And I think that's one of the positive things that's come out of this awful pandemic.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think we've all been confronted with our own mental health issues and understanding other people's, I guess, vulnerabilities in a different way because we've been confronted with it and forced to deal with it. But I know, you know what? I just realized my little door is open, my balcony door, so I'm going to close it. And hopefully I'm going to do it in a way that no one can see my pajama bottoms.
I have to say, I'm wearing shorts, and those socks that are pretend shoes. You know what I mean? They've got little things on the bottom.
Yeah.
I'm basically wearing
I
pajamas.
mean, I think it's been really interesting too in terms of mental health, is that there are just so many layers, and I think with the pandemic that we all found, whether you were, I mean, I'm single, so I was on my own. People who were I mean, you and Grant were together. Thankfully, you guys like each other more than like each other, so it was good. Yeah. But, you know, we also sort of, I'm sure we both know probably people even in common who the pandemic really solidified the difficulties in their family situations or marriages.
And domestic abuse has gone up, like loads of percent. I mean, it's like a massive. I mean, that's understandable. That's if domestic abuse exists in situations where people are trapped in a thing, and obviously it makes it. But that's been a terrifying thing about it. I think it's been really interesting, the pandemic. Like, it's for some people. I mean, I guess like life, but some people have thrived. Some people have sort of crashed. Mm-hmm. And I think it's been a really interesting way for people to understand many things about themselves, and also about what they need and what they rely on from interaction.
Sure.
And I have to say, for me, I keep saying I have to say that I've really, the thing that, you know, going back into sort of real life or normal, whatever that is, life again, even though I'm in quarantine right now. So, but when I actually, you know, before I left America, we had a weekend where we had people, all vaccinated people, came to stay for the first time in over a year and a half at our place upstate. Mm-hmm. And it was great, and it was lovely, and it was amazing to see how quickly you go back into just, you can touch people and you can chat and you can hug and you can, you know, all that, and you don't have to wait like on a Zoom for the other person to stop talking in a conversation. You can actually talk over each other. But the thing I felt at the end of the weekend,
you mean like this? No. Sorry.
Comedy timing. The thing I missed was no, I felt like I didn't have enough time to myself over the weekend.
Oh, that's interesting.
I so realized how much I needed and want to make sure I keep in going back into the world again, time for myself and more time for myself than I ever did before.
Yeah. No, it's, I think it's been, I've had a feeling about, in terms of just things opening back up, around wanting to make sure that I don't forget the very lessons I learned in the pandemic as well, about what were the ways I wanted to slow down, what did I miss the most.
Yeah.
And I think for me, in terms of mental health, it was, how do I say this? I think because of the extended stressors, right? So, I mean, I think we all found ourselves in different situations emotionally, and what the pandemic brought out in me, and I was sort of in something new, and it just brought out some of the worst things in me, and it really provided me with an opportunity to have to look in the mirror at a lot of behaviors that I thought were okay or not my fault, and and really has created a space for me to work on that in a really good way. And I feel like I think of all of the things that I do for my mental health, I think of as my helpers, like how my psychiatrist, who's a trauma specialist, who's my main therapist, and my energy healer, and my consciousness person, and my intuitive, and my, this and that. And I probably have something 5 days a week to
wow.
to be at this point. But I think part of that has been in part because sometimes there's certain things that you can't, especially with trauma, you can't get to until you have these in vivo experiences,
Yes.
And so so I think for me, I feel really grateful, even though there was, it was painful at times. I feel incredibly grateful to have had these opportunities, to try to work on them and to change. So
that you mean that because you otherwise mightn't have confronted these things.
Yeah, exactly. Or and I think too with it, I don't, I also, I want to say I fully recognize, the privilege of being able to get all of this mental health support. I mean, it's sort of the negotiation I had to do with myself, in terms of, this is what I have to do. This is what I had to do to go back into the public world, to kind of show up, to do the things I do. I have to do all these things. And I just had to accept it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, yeah, sort of I feel like I'm rambling and talking too long. So you talk.
Not at all. No, I think maybe we should talk about that, how we met, because
people may not know.
People might not know. We were lovers in Calais.
I was just going to say, you picked me up at a bar. Sorry. Someone asked us on Twitter, I don't, from our post, I'm not sure if you saw it, someone in response to my post about us doing our chat, asked if, I don't know if it was you or me, had been a hooker before. So
probably me.
Yeah, I said no, not me, maybe Alan, but yeah. So
we met in 2000
20+ years ago.
Yeah, isn't that
over
funny?
20 years. I know.
It's so crazy to say that. So and it was at a party given by our friend Glenda Bailey, who then was the editor of Marie Claire magazine, and she'd sent me to Paris to cover the haute couture shows. Such a hilarious idea. It was like one of these. I was like, "What? I get to go to Paris and go to all these fashion shows and go to parties and stay in a nice hotel?" And then she was like, "Yes," and write about you as a sort of your take on it all. It was fascinating. And then, an interesting, actually, I thought an interesting thing, just as a little sidebar, about sort of, what's the word, hypocrisy and sort of the patriarchy at work. And that, that everyone, well, just like thinking, these women, these very, very rich women who go to these shows, the haute couture shows, and they buy these dresses that cost hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're all handmade and all that. But this one lady said to me, "You got to understand, Alan, I will never wear this. I will just keep it in my wardrobe and I'll look at it. It's like a piece of art." And I thought, gosh, isn't it? And they were getting criticized about the sort of, what's that word when you just, I can't remember, when it's like just a ridiculous amount of money for something. And actually, if it was a painting or a sculpture, nobody would do that. But because it was women doing it, and it was about clothes and fashion, I thought there was a really interesting hypocrisy going on there. Anyway, then when the article came out, Glenda threw me a party.
Right.
As well. So it was a win-win situation. And you came to that party because they'd done an article about you. And this was...
I had been to I was supposed to be a guest editor, and then it somehow turned into an article about me that was sort of, so, I don't know. I still love Glenda.
Me too. And then we met at the party, and I have a picture. We're both wearing green.
I know. And it wasn't St. Patrick's Day.
No, it wasn't. It was just and also just a bad. I don't know what I was. It was like something I'd borrowed from like.
It was like an elf suit.
Yeah, like a TV, a lady TV host from the 80s had
like
her jacket. I was big shoulder thing.
Yeah, no, I didn't. But I mean, I remember actually one of the earlier sort of kind of deep connecting moments for me in our friendship was not long. It was like maybe within the first year of us knowing each other, and you sent me this really thoughtful and lovely email after having read Andrew Morton's authorized biography of me.
Yes.
And it was in a, still very raw time from 98. And I just remembered not only sort of being able to see your warmth, but feeling seen. I felt very seen by you. And I think that for me, that just allowed another layer of trust and truth to be between us, which, you're one of the few people I let say things like, get out of your own way.
Monica, what the hell? That's interesting because I think it's sort of, when I met you, obviously I knew who you were and what had happened and what you'd gone through. But then and then we were starting to get to know each other, and I read that book, and it was like my new friend. It was sort of interesting, that thing of, which is an interesting thing when you're well known, that, I feel like I have Alan Cumming and then me, and I think that's a good way to sort of maneuver the whole thing of being this public figure for anyone. And I realized it was I remember that so distinctly, realizing this person was not just this news item, but suddenly this had actually happened to you. And it was, it's interesting because also we often don't confront those things. You sort of think, oh, I won't. I think that's my Scottishness thing. And like you're saying, I do speak my mind, but we often don't say like, oh my gosh, I just read the book and how awful. And that it's in our culture, it's not really the done thing to kind of confront that. And also because you think maybe you're going to remind a person of something that is a negative experience, but actually sometimes that's really important. Well, not sometimes, that's always, I think, really important to actually broach it. It's actually, it's one of the things that just sort of semi non sequitur, but just in the kind of anti-bullying work that I've done, that I think when people say, what's the most helpful thing you can do, most important thing? I mean, if you're the target, it's really making sure you tell someone what's happening. But if you know someone or you're a bystander, it really is to reach out to that person in any way. It doesn't have to be in front of a group, but even just a text. But I think it is that thing that whether you go through something like I did, which was very public, or you go through something privately, to feel taken out of context, to feel as if you are not seen for your true self can be an incredibly damaging experience. And I think about with young people, especially when they're just in the process of trying to discover who they are, stretching the limits and the boundaries of, who am I, trying to understand. So we talked recently about social media and about, you said this thing about how you saw a report where young 13-year-olds, I think, on their phones, it was from their phones.
It was from Anderson Cooper's documentary a few years ago called Being 13, and if I remember this stat correctly, I should look it up because I'm always quoting it, so make sure it's right.
I hope it's right. I've been telling you.
Exactly, I know. So I'm just embellished. I'm sorry, I'll be serious. No, but it stuck with me, and it was that they had access to these 13-year-olds' phones, and that on average the early teens were taking 150 pictures, selfies, for one that they would post. And I was just, you know, what really kind of punched me in the gut with that was thinking about the negative self-talk in the 149 that they didn't choose. And, you know, that's sort of, and we've seen, you know, I think we've seen a rise in mental health issues, not only because of the, you know, even though that obviously social media can be ways of finding your people, you know, but it can also be, you know, people are curating themselves. You see what you've been excluded. You always, I mean, I always think everybody is like more in love, you know, wealthier, having more fun, have more friends. So you have that less than feeling a lot, but also the other part to it too. And I think we don't consider this enough, is that we're all collateral damage in a way. Like we all see, you know, when you see online bullying happening, when you see someone being taken down, you're witnessing it, you experience it, even if it's not you, you know, you're sort of, I think you're still impacted. You're not impacted in the same way, but we, you know, we see all of those things. So help, what is going on in this chat? Alan and I are talking about, we're supposed to be talking about our mental health stuff. So, sorry.
Can you please show your house? No, not appropriate. Anyway, so how are you actually feeling right now, Miss Monica? I mean, like, how's your head, hun? As that lady says.
You know, I'm feeling incredibly grateful. So I'm feeling really grateful because I mean, aside from professional work, so for which I'm incredibly grateful, I've been working really hard on myself. I mean, I added into my mix of, no, I'm blanking on the name. Oh my gosh, a somatic therapist. So my psychiatrist was saying that she thought this particular somatic therapist would be a good addition to my team. And it's where, so if you think about, you know, in traditional therapy, you're basically talking about your thoughts. Your thoughts are telling you what you're feeling and what you're thinking and your memories of your experiences. And with somatic therapy, you use the body. So the body is the guide for like where the session goes and where the issues are. And so it's made me realize, aside from just like beating myself up for weight or cellulite or, you know,
so wait, you talk about what you're feeling in different parts of your body, and is it like where stress goes? Is that
and you just you tune into your body. So like I often something that the therapist has said to me recently, which has just been really interesting, I don't know if it'll land for anybody else, is you're in your legs, you're not just on your legs. Like your torso is not just on, it's all connected. So for me, I'm often disconnected. I often feel disconnected between the lower half of my body and my upper half. So,
well, that's interesting.
And yeah, I think that's childhood trauma stuff. So, yeah. So,
all right. It's so interesting, you know. I was thinking about that, about dealing with trauma, like, and my new book that's coming out, ladies and gentlemen, which I'm going to send you. I talk. One of the reasons I wrote it is in response to my first memoir, because.
Wait, your first one or Not My Father's Son?
No, Not My Father's Son was my first memoir.
Oh, okay.
And I've done other books, but this is another memoir. And it's kind of in response to the reaction I got from Not My Father's Son. Not My Father's Son, who people don't know, is a book I wrote about my abusive dad and this kind of crazy series of events that happened to me when he told me I wasn't his son. And also at the same time, I discovered my grandfather died playing Russian roulette in Malaysia. It was a lot. So it was a very scary thing to do, actually, because I think people think of me as like, oh, happy-go-lucky Alan, you know, la la la, mischievous and everything. And then all of a sudden I was like, here is a big data dump of a lot of abuse and trauma that I've had in my life. And also a lot of stuff I had been very ashamed of. Me and my mum and my brother were all, you know, something that you're very, because good abusers make you feel ashamed. That's the way that they keep the cycle going. So anyway, when it came out, it was great. It could not have gone better. And it's been really great the way I've realized I have helped so many people by being so frank and open about my experience. But the thing I didn't like was this sort of concept and sort of idea that Alan has recovered. Alan is cured. He's overcome. He's triumphed from his past, from his mental stuff that happened to him. And actually, I don't like that. And so what I've tried to say in this book is you never recover. You're never cured. It's not something to be cured of. All of us, no matter if you've had a fairly uneventful life in terms of abuse, we all have things in our past that are difficult and that form us and that haunt us. And all you do is manage it. And I think it's really important to say, the moment you say, oh, I'm over it, I've cured, I've done it, that's the moment that you're in denial. And that's when problems start.
Well, it's just not this, I mean, I feel like we're basically living in the middle, and we tend to be fed these narratives of like a hero's journey, you know, and that it's kind of this linear, you know, you had your problem, now you worked on it, and now life is great. And it's not. It's exactly what you say. It's really sort of riding the waves. And my trauma psychiatrist talks about trauma a lot, that the echo of trauma it lasts for a long time.
Oh my God.
You know, and I struggle. I get really frustrated. I had I was talking to a friend of mine this was like maybe a couple of months ago, and just it was like yet again I had sort of been triggered in a specific way, and the frustration I felt of like not being able to rid myself of this feeling or this behavior. And you know, she really gently said to me, she was like, you know, it's not about it's not ever going to go away, but what's going to happen is it's not going to affect you as much or for as long. And the recovery is really, you know, the recovery period or the refractory period or whatever you want to look at it as, you know, it's that I think is important too. And so that it's not binary in terms of like, you have the trigger or you don't have the trigger. It's so much more about, okay, how do you recognize how can you recognize that trigger faster? How can you sort of calm yourself down or not, and just accept like, okay, this is what I do. Sometimes when this happens and that happens, I do this, and that's what I do.
And
you
it's
know,
going to keep happening, and it's just something
and don't shame yourself, because I think the self shame, you know, is really
again sort of thing.
But you know, you're talking about your memoir reminds me too that, and I don't know if you want to talk about this a little at all, but for a PSA that I did a couple of years ago for Anti-Bullying Month, we had a number of well-known people in it who were using names that they had been called when they were younger that they were bullied by. And your word, like in your name, was useless, Alan Useless Cumming. And that you had said that your dad had called you useless. And so I know you were just talking about the memoir, but you kind of, you know, glossed over telling us what it was. But I mean, where do you feel like you, where do you feel you turned the corner? And not all better, but I mean, sort of because that was a very intense period for you. I remember it, of finding these things out and working through them.
I think you know, the thing is that I find definitely, you know, I've always, you know, up until that book came out, I had a nervous breakdown as 28, which was totally due to having not remembered whole swathes of the stuff, the abuse with my father, the violence and all sorts of stuff, completely blocked it away. And I think it was actually a good thing. I mean, from my body helped me, but it was too much for me to process it at that. You know, having a person a parent who was completely crazy and abusing me and you know, physically and mentally making me really, really sort of you know, disabling my progress in that way. It was actually a good thing when you realize how clever we are to kind of block off certain things. And then, you know, then it was like when I was 28, it was like, okay, now you have to deal with this, because I was thinking of becoming a father myself. So for years, I've been working on all that, and you know, that I felt but then this whole new thing happened when my dad actually got in touch and said, "P.S. by the way, you're not my son," which was not true. So, so I just mental. So the thing about it was, I felt that obviously talking about it, and talking about it in a hugely public way, was such a great thing to do and not just for me, for my mum and my brother as well. And unexpectedly great, actually. And I can't say enough how important it is to talk, to just get it out there, and just, you know, and also how much you can help other people. You don't have to be a famous person. Just you talking and sharing with someone else, it's amazing. But the thing I felt like, you know, my dad calling me useless, that was obviously, I know that still rings in my mind, but at the same time, my mum told me I was precious. So I had this huge dichotomy growing up. And what it did was, it made me, and it's a thing that's really formed me, has made me realize I have to make up my mind about things, because I got this wide spectrum of opinion about myself, which I knew they both couldn't be right. So actually, I had to make it up my mind. And it's something that I feel a very positive thing to come out of a really terrible situation. And there always are positive things to come out of even the worst situations, like with the pandemic that we're talking about. But it makes me, in my work, in everything I do, I realize, and I have quite a strong sense of myself and a strong sense of my own opinion, even if it's wrong. I actually think, well, I thought that at the time, and that's what I acted on. And, you know, I understand this point of view, I understand that point of view, but this is what I think. And I think that's something in a culture and in an industry which you're constantly being swayed by fads and fashions and opinions. It's a really, you know, inadvertently, it was a great gift that my father gave me.
Yeah. Interesting.
I wanted to ask you a question, Monica Lewinsky.
Okay, Alan Cumming.
Is when you said that thing about being triggered, because I mean, that must happen, or the potential for triggering must happen all the time. Like, your name is in all these, you know, rap songs and films, and like, you're a historical figure and a cultural reference point, as well as a real person. So it must just be, like, we talked about this the other day when you said, you know, how you sort of block out, and I do as well. I think people a little bit, but you know, you just sort of, it's not until someone else points out how crazy certain situations are.
Yes.
But it must be so much more constant for you because of, and I just wonder how you deal with that volume of it.
Well, I guess that the first thing that pops in my mind is, just because the nature of this is public, what I don't do is I don't have a Google alert. So I'm very mindful of, but you know, for a long time, and I don't, you know, I think one of the incredible benefits of the way things have changed for me the last few years is that my life has become about more than just that, and filled with more things, so that I'm less worried. People know me from my true self a bit more now, so I'm less worried if there's some stupid story, or there's like a hideous picture, that there's just, you know, there's a wider berth of information out there. So I you know, I think what can be really hard, I liken it, I mean, the two things I've likened it to are sometimes being like an ER doctor, because you'll be in the middle, you know, like I'm in the middle of a meeting on a project, and I get a text of you know, actually when Linda Tripp was on her deathbed, and it's like, oh, okay, all of a sudden, you know, your whole world shifts in that sense, and you're completely changing. And I think too that there can be this, like, with PTSD, and I saw someone ask a question about EMDR, which I have done. So yes. Oh, you didn't like EMDR? Okay. EMDR was very
What's
powerful for me. So I always get this part wrong. Eye movement desensitization, reprocessing, or reprogramming, something like that. But it's you either use like you use eye movement or a certain tapping or sound. And the idea is like that we store trauma in the body, and so that there are ways to tap into that to release that trauma and reprogram your body.
Wow.
It's amazing. It's like, you know, you think of putting your traumas in a file folder, you know, being able to take them out of the folder, but it can be really challenging. The first time I did it, I wasn't so it was successful. It was very successful. So when I was in grad school, I was very stressed out. And when grad school, like during grad school and in the year after, when I was trying to find a job, I couldn't go more than 3 days without thinking about the FBI sting that happened at the beginning of the investigation. That's like worst day of my life, pretty unpleasant thing to relive in your mind, you know, every 72 hours. So the first time I did EMDR was around that, and it completely helped me with that. But I also found that the thing is that we store we have our own filing system, and we store like trauma with like trauma, however we do it. And so you can't, like, there were other things that were wanting to come up around that incident that had nothing to do with that incident. And I wasn't ready to look at those. So it became an unpleasant experience for me. But over time, you know, I found for myself, I don't know about you, but I found for myself that as I'm able to sort of work on and quiet some traumas, that it makes room, like, oh, good. It makes room for new ones to come.
Now we can deal with these things.
I'll just keep everybody in business forever. I'll start a GoFundMe for my therapy. my energy, my consciousness, my this, my that. So
what I think is great that you do, Grant and my husband and I were talking about this morning, is how much you use humor. I mean, you are maybe they don't know that you are a hilarious person. Like, we laugh. We did a podcast together recently, and I was just listening to the edit of it the other day. It's sometimes you can't hear what's going on. We're just laughing like brains so much. The bit about the baguette. There's a story about a baguette. I won't go into it now, but
you should tell everyone you have a new podcast.
I have a new podcast. It's called Alan Cumming's Shelves. So, and I talk about things from my shelves, and I talk about a person who's involved in it. So Monica was a guest. It's coming out soon. But I wanted to say, you use humor in such a great way to both be vulnerable and also to let other people know that you're okay, or you're okay with discussing this and making fun of it. Like, what's the thing you just did today on Twitter when you did the little eyes?
Oh. Yes. You know, it's interesting. It was, I love this account called Uberfacts, and they're always putting these interesting things up. And it was something of like, what's the riskiest thing you've done that's had the least reward? So, but you know, it's interesting because I'm sort of one of those people that really wants everyone to like me. So I just seen a bunch of comments of people remarking that I bring up what happened in '98 too much on my own. And it was just interesting because what I realized, because I really don't, but I realized that those are actually the tweets that tend to get more traction, that people, you know, that sort of move around because it's a cultural touchstone, or, you know, in my mind, it's like, well, there's still something there to work on, you know, or release for people. So, but whatever, I'm just whinging about that everybody doesn't love me. So
everyone does love you. That's the thing, though. Everyone who knows you loves you.
Wow.
Because you're darling. The world loves you, says DeBarros the rapper.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Thanks, DeBarros.
How's our time going? You've got the meetings.
Yeah, I do. So I want to make sure, because I've actually seen a couple comments coming through of some people who are going through a hard time right now, of not these people right here, but it was some other people just posting about either having PTSD or being in abusive homes at the moment. So I think we have, do you have the information? So, I just want to make sure.
You go to the Mental Health Coalition. This is what we're doing is for the Mental Health Coalition. And it's a coalition of all mental health organizations and charities and stuff like that. And if you click on the link in their bio, it takes you to a website where it has a variety of resources and places to go. And that's what this whole thing is about. Obviously, we're doing this to hopefully destigmatize and to encourage people to talk about stuff, but also this coalition that Kenneth Cora's been integral in starting, is to give a central place that people can go to with a variety of needs and have someone or an organization to help them. So it's it's actually at the top, the thing that you're on, Monica, is it's Mental Health Coalition.
Just don't tell me I have to do anything.
You don't have to do anything. Just
okay.
But people have to go there.
The other thing that I posted this past week, because it was a different mental health day, I think. There was a day in the month kind of a thing, was, you know, I think too, just an understanding of how much people do. So, I mean, I've sort of referenced it a bit already in our chat, but I mean, I'm on medication. I have a trauma psychiatrist. I have a somatic therapist. I do consciousness work and energy work and, you know, everything in between, and acupuncture. And I don't really meditate, but I try to walk. Walking at the beach like really helps me. Oh, hi, Annie. Annie was just saying to give maybe there's a 1-800 number for mental health, but I don't know what the number, but this is the
I bet it'll be on that thing. I bet it'll be on the mental
health. It's probably on the website. That was Annie. So you know Annie. My friend Annie.
Oh, your friend Annie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, she's so good at reading the comments. I'm not being really looking at them.
I'm just not listening to you. That's all. I'm just kidding.
Very wise.
It's that time again on Broadway. Sorry. But I highly recommend laughing. I love to laugh. I really do. I really do.
Honestly, on that podcast, it's just sometimes you can't hear because either one of us is like guffawing so loudly. It's such a great thing to do for your.
And we were sober.
And we were sober too. Yeah, but it's also good that you talk about body work. Actually, the thing that releases in your body when you actually laugh, it's, you know, those things are really important. I think it's really good that you mentioned that. The whole thing that we think about is just a thing in the mind. So, you know, stress goes to various parts of our body, and I always get really pissed off when I'm in a situation, a stressful situation that's not of my, you know, doing or making. I get angry about the fact that, you know, this is probably making me ill because some part of my body is going to be taking this, and it turns into something awful.
Yeah, I just started. I think we'll I'll say this, then you can have the last word. That I'd had a lot of people recommending this book called The Untethered Soul to me by Michael Singer. Yeah, and it was, you know, it was sort of, I've heard it over the years, but then I had kind of a concentrated moment of like, all right, fine, I'll read the book. And I couldn't get into it. And one of my friends who had recommended it said she had listened to it on a book on tape, which for nonfiction doesn't usually, I usually like to read nonfiction. But this book on tape has been incredible. And I think it's really interesting, like when you're talking about, you know, the thoughts and making you ill, it really makes you question, you know, and recognize this idea of who we are is like a consciousness that has awareness. And we're the ones, because it's like, we're the ones who see these things. And, you know, I think it's great. You should listen to it on one of your.
The Untethered Soul. I've got some time now. My 2 weeks.
Exactly.
Day of 14.
You know what? I'll gift it to you. I'll send it to you.
My love. Thank you so much.
So
you
wrap up.
You are a gift. You are a gift, Monica Lewinsky. You are a gift to us all.
No, you are. Thank you for your friendship, Alan, all these years. I'm going to say in front of all these people so that they think I'm nice.
No, it's great. I think we've been both, it's gone both ways. Like, you know, you've known me over 20 years and various relationships and been such a support and a shoulder to cry on and a, you know, everything. And so I think it's like friendship, and a friendship like ours, that we're honest with each other and we talk and we laugh. That's what life's all about, and that's what makes life bearable, is knowing you have that connection with people. So thank you, Monica, and I love you.
I love you. I can't wait to squeeze your face.
It'll be a while. I'll see you soon, though. I'll see you back in probably
July.
September. Yeah. Well, I've got to go to Scotland after that.
Okay.
Anyway, thanks everyone for listening.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.
To the Mental Health Coalition.
Yes. .org.